If I can start by just saying a huge thank you to our panelists, who I will just say a little bit about in a second by means of introduction, but also our lower 5 GCSE musicians who have been working hard to come up with some cracking interview questions to pose to this fantastic panel. So thank you very much to those girls who we will hear from throughout this session. So just to say, this is our second panel interview of the week. We had a fantastic session yesterday. And there are lots more materials and resources and further interviews as well with some great people on the festival website. So please do find a chance to check that out this week. It's got a page per day of wonderful resources, including some great stuff by the people in front of me today. So I will just lead into a very quick introduction on each person. And I wonder if as I'm saying it, those people could say hello and give us a wave so we can see them. So Charles McDougall, first of all. Hello, Charles. And Charles is an award-winning tenor, choral director and vocal coach. And we've been honoured that he's put together 3 bespoke warm-ups for us this week for various different groups. In fact, I've already called him, possibly offensively, I don't know, the musical Joe Wicks of our times. So he's put together a real great start to the day that we've been able to embrace. Charles is formerly a member of the internationally acclaimed ensemble Voces 8, that I know many of us will recognise, and sings with a wide variety of other well-known ensembles. He's also a busy soloist with an international career and an accomplished conductor and vocal coach, and we're delighted to have him with us. So thank you, Charles. We also have Libby Burgess, if I could have a quick wave from Libby, hopefully.
Hello.
And Libby has forged a reputation as one of the country's leading pianists, and is also the artistic director of New Paths Music. And Libby was, we discovered from your biography, was the first woman to be appointed organ scholar at any of the kind of all-male Oxbridge choral foundations. So I believe you were organ scholar at Christ Church, Oxford, and we would definitely like to hear a little bit more about that. We are also delighted that Libby put together a bespoke performance for us, which was on yesterday's page of the website, which you can access throughout the week. So 2 really beautiful performances of some quite reflective pieces by Clara Schumann and Amy Beach that ties in really nicely with our topic to do with women in the creative arts, and particularly putting a spotlight on the fantastic but sometimes unheard work of female composers. So Libby, thank you not only for that performance, but actually for talking us through a bit of background about those 2 fantastic examples from the genre as well. We're really thrilled to welcome Kitty Waitley as well. I don't know if Kitty can give us a wave.
Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. Kitty is a mezzo-soprano and has a glittering career in opera, having performed in a great number of lead roles. She was a BBC New Generation artist from 2013 to 2015, and so has made recordings with BBC orchestras and has appeared at various times on the BBC proms. And she is much in demand as a recitalist and concert artist. So thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, thank you.
And Ben Ormerod, if Ben could give us a wave. Thank you, Ben. We're really honoured to welcome Ben, who really is one of the foremost authorities on lighting design, with extensive experience in plays, operas, contemporary dance and musicals throughout the UK and abroad. I mean, Ben's experience is second to none, I think, in his work through the West End, Broadway, the National Theatre, RSC and English National Opera. The list goes on and on. But he's also the head of lighting at the Calico Museum of Textiles in India, in a town that I can't pronounce, so I didn't put it on my notes. Ben, can you help me out?
Ahmedabad.
Thank you. Beautifully done. We're also thrilled that Ben's going to be giving a lunchtime talk tomorrow on lighting design. So please do tune in for that. There'll be a Zoom link where you can follow that at 1:30 tomorrow. And finally, Genevieve, who hopefully many of you met yesterday, if you were able to join the talk. And I know a number of you will recognise from the Inspiring Females sessions the school have done over the last few years, who brings extensive experience as a director in theatre and opera, but also has formed her own company Into Opera, and maintains great links with this school as a former pupil, and we're really thrilled that she has managed to put together a huge amount in this week's programme. So thank you again, Genevieve, for that. And a reminder that Genevieve is giving our lunchtime talk today on directing, 5 tips if you want to be a director, which is certainly worth looking out for, please. So 1:30 today for that as well. So that's quite enough from me. I'll then just hand over to the panelists if they wanted to say a quick hello from each of them, perhaps starting with Genevieve, and then we can work our way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. I mean, they were lovely introductions. Just to add, I suppose I'm employed by Into Opera, this organisation that I founded, and I'm employed part-time in the role of CEO and artistic director for that organisation. So that's a little bit of my life. But the other part of my life is freelance, where I work as a director of plays, of opera, also as a dramaturg, as a librettist, writing words for operas, words for songs, as a producer, as in arts marketing, as an audience development manager. I can kind of keep listing lots of different things that different hats I've worn over different years. And that's something I've really loved and thrived on actually in my work, is the different journeys it's taken me on, the different opportunities I've managed to kind of carve out, and the different experiences I've had. So I'm kind of here in that capacity today, I suppose, having some experience of working as kind of a salaried employee, but also with very much a freelancer lifestyle experience as well. Charles, shall I hand over to you?
Thanks, Genevieve. So hi, everyone. It's just lovely to be here. And as Mr. Barlow said, he gave it away. My first proper job as a musician was as a member of the vocal group Vultures 8, which I was in all the way back 2005 to 2012. And that was a lot of touring and a lot of recording and lots of radio and television. It was all terribly glamorous at times, which was very lovely. But I left the group after 8 years of doing that to have a bit more freedom, really, to follow my own path, to do a bit more vocal coaching and choral direction, which is the other thing that sort of makes up me professionally. I still do sing now, as Mr. Barlow said, everything from terribly worthy early music projects to seriously cool studio recording at Abbey Road for all of the big films. So I'm often on those kind of soundtracks somewhere in the mix. I spend a lot of time in my role as the choral director of the Voices Foundation, which is a music education charity that works with teachers to develop music programs to sort of help teachers unlock their skills running choirs and developing the voice. And I actually head up a team now of 12 choral practitioners who work all over the UK. When I've got a bit more energy, a bit of space in the diary, I'm the vocal ensembles coach and a tutor in vocal studies at Junior Trinity, which of course is the junior branch of Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance in very beautiful Greenwich. What else? At least a couple of times a year, I have to chorus master an ensemble called Gabrieli Raw, which has 400 young singers in it. That's like driving a truck. I am one of the 5 ambassadors for the Britain Peers Friday Afternoons project, which is based in Snake Maltings, which geographically isn't too far from Norwich. It's sort of within spitting distance. I can maybe talk about that later. I've got 2 community choirs that I direct in London. And between all of that, I do a lot of freelance workshops and choral masterclasses for everybody from London Symphony Orchestra, local choral societies, chamber choirs, or direct festivals for schools or charities. And when I've got time to squeeze in something else, I'm also, and this is a new part of my working life, I'm a trustee of Into Opera, which of course Genevieve's just mentioned. She's CEO, artistic director. And I mention that because it is part of my freelance life and part of my thinking. And so I'm on their board of trustees. And then when I've done all of that, I go and lie down in a dark, very quiet room. Shall I hand on to Libby?
Brilliant. Well, follow that. That's quite an impressive list, isn't it? As has already been said, I am a pianist. but within that, I do quite a lot of different things. So what I really enjoy in my musical career is working with other people. Most of the piano playing I do is with either singers or instrumentalists. So that might be giving concerts, just me and a singer, or it might be giving concerts with a string quartet or a group of players, or making recordings or broadcasts with those different configurations as well. And I'm sure this is a theme that's going to come up quite a lot today, but one of the things that I love about what I do is the variety that it affords. And so working with different people on different days. So I'm not part of a regular group or ensemble, but there are quite a lot of people that I work with kind of repeatedly, and that's really lovely, as well as constantly kind of meeting and working with new people. As well as working with people from the piano, I also coach singers. I think a lot of the coaching that Charles does is probably for bigger groups, and the coaching that I do is mostly one-to-one with singers. I'm sure there's lots of overlap as well, but that's something that I really enjoy. So I'm often booked to coach on summer courses and things like that, or with students at music college, or professionals as well. So that's a fun part of what I do. I also am artistic director of the New Paths Festival, which I set up a few years ago. And we now have 2 festivals a year. So that takes a lot of time programming, coordinating that, as well as learning and performing in lots of the concerts. And Kitty came up and sang for us a couple of years ago, and that was brilliant. So one of the fun things about that is being able to book people that I believe in and love working with, and get them up to Yorkshire. Yeah, lots of other bits and bobs that fit around those things. I give talks, I write articles, I direct choruses as well. But the main part of what I do, I would say, is playing and working with singers. I'll hand over in no particular order, but Kitty, because I've just mentioned her, maybe is the next person.
Thanks, Libby. Hi, everyone. So my name's Kitty, as your teacher said. Sorry, Mr. Barlow. And I am a singer mainly. So I sing opera, but I also sing a lot of recitals. So I do a lot of concerts with usually just myself and a pianist. So I was lucky enough to perform with Libby a few years ago in her New Paths Festival that she mentioned. So I do a lot of that, especially at the moment, because all the theatres have been shut down by the pandemic. Luckily, it's been a little bit easier for the sort of recital world to continue. So I've been really lucky to be able to carry on working quite a lot and do concerts when a lot of my opera colleagues have not had any work at all, which has been really miserable and scary for everybody. I also am a mum, which is tricky with a freelance opera career. So I've got 2 children, one's 14 and one is 4. So there's a big age gap between them, but it means that my 14-year-old is quite a good babysitter, and she doesn't mind that because it means that she gets paid. And I run a charity, SWAPRA. So some colleagues and I from the opera industry got together and noticed that there were some really, really big imbalances within this industry. So few female composers represented in the music that was being chosen by opera companies. So few female conductors, female directors, and particularly female leaders in the really top big boss roles in these opera companies, and the sort of orchestras and the main big producers of music are rarely. There are rarely women at the very top position. So we got together and we said, why is this, and what can we do to try and make this better? So we've been running for about 3 years now, and we work in 2 sort of paths. One is, as I say, trying to work on sort of gender imbalances in the opera industry, and the other is to try and support working parents in our industry. So we have support groups, and we've been sort of trying to gently talk to the industry about how it can be more inclusive of parents, what it can do to make the industry more accessible for parents to be able to work. Because unlike people in what we call normal jobs, we don't have a lot of the sort of legislative protection that a salaried job would offer. We don't have maternity leave or paternity leave. We don't have paid holidays. There are unemployment benefits, things like that. We are sort of living job to job. So if you get pregnant and you can't do a job, you don't get paid. So there are a lot of things about being a parent that are tricky in a freelance career. So we try to address some of those issues, or at least just give a space for parents to be able to talk about that. So yeah, they are the three main areas of my life: singing, parenting, and swapperering, and that's me. So I will pass on to Ben.
Hello. So until about a year ago, I was working with a different company more or less every 4 weeks. So completely freelance, not in any way employed by anybody else, rather than just on a job-by-job basis. Most of my time spent lighting operas, ballets, dance productions, but actually mainly theatre, mostly more plays than anything else. And then in addition to that, anytime an empty 2-3 weeks would appear on my schedule, and if it wasn't the monsoon season or the summer, I would head off to India and light another room in the Calico Museum of Textiles, which I've been doing now for about 25 years. It's a big job, and they're quite happy for me to take my time over it, which is lovely. And then in addition to that, I do a little bit of teaching, so working mostly at drama schools or universities, but really probably about 10-15 days a year, mentoring students, teaching color perception, and I'm also very interested in mentoring young lighting designers, but I do that as a part of my work. So for instance, Jen, when we were working on Elixir, we had a young lighting designer programming the lighting desk, and she was really there just to learn more and more about the craft. That's an aspect of lighting that really interests me. That's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. What a great insight into the many varied things that you do. So I wonder if I can hand over to Rosie, who has our first question.
Okay, the first question is, what is a freelancer, and can you explain what's meant by a portfolio career? And that's just a general question for anyone who has the answer.
Okay, so just some kind of very basic kind of starting points, bullet points really, to kind of get this discussion started. In terms of theatre, around 70% of the theatre workforce are freelancers. Just to give you that stat to start with. If you are a freelancer, you are not employed by one company alone. You have the chance to be employed by lots and lots of different companies, and as Ben said, that might change even every 4 weeks, or you might be employed by multiple companies at the same time. As a freelancer, you can take short-term employment opportunities, therefore, from anywhere. You tend to be paid either project by project, and you'll get a fee for that, or you might get paid by the hour or weekly or monthly. It really will depend on the project and who you're working for and for how long and in what capacity. If you are a freelancer, you effectively are your own business and you are your own brand. You are self-employed. So you are responsible for finding your own work and building that kind of work schedule for yourself, and constantly having to almost like remarket yourself and seek out those work opportunities. So that's just a start on the kind of what is a freelancer point. What is a portfolio career? I read this article in The Guardian which described a portfolio career as being 1 part pain, 2 parts pleasure, which I thought summed it up actually quite nicely. For a portfolio career, you kind of park this idea of having one single job for life, and instead you embrace almost an adventure with your career, and embrace the idea that your career is something that is continuously evolving, where you embrace this openness of trying new things and experimenting with your career and wanting to work in different places with different people in different capacities, and stretching actually your own personal toolbox, and being open to your career going down different paths, and also wanting to take on different roles. Like I mentioned, I'm principally a theatre director, and I work in theatre and in opera. But in making operas, I like to tell stories. So sometimes I'm writing the words for operas as well. I'm writing a libretti as well. So a portfolio career, I think, is about wearing lots of different hats and doing a wide range of jobs. So that's my kind of almost starting provocation. Some thoughts about what it means to be a freelancer and some thoughts about what it means to have a portfolio career. I'll hand over to my panel to kind of just build on that.
Yeah, I would say a lot of us, I don't know about in other areas of the industry, but certainly as performers, most of us will go into it with an idea of, well, I'm going to be a megastar and that's it. I'm going to succeed and I don't need to think about anything else. And for most of us, it just doesn't work like that. It's certainly in opera, there are a very small handful of people who are, for a start, earning enough money to just exist on their singing career or their, their freelance focus. So the majority of us subsidize what we do as performers by teaching or having completely unrelated jobs. I know lots of people who do yoga teaching or massage or working in pubs and things like that. So in that respect, you sort of have to start having a portfolio career right from the start just to subsidize your life, because it's not a very well paid profession unless you are a megastar. But I certainly find that as my career has become more and more varied, all of the different elements of my work affect the others positively and negatively. And so I certainly find with my teaching and the work that I do with SWOPRA, it's really, really improved my singing, I think, because I'm constantly thinking about the things that I'm telling students to do and thinking, well, am I doing that? I must make sure that I'm doing that. And the things that I'm asking of the industry, it's making me feel a little bit more emboldened myself as a parent. I feel a little bit braver to say to an opera company now, actually, I need to leave at this time because my daughter has a dentist appointment. And whereas a couple of years ago, I would have felt really, really nervous to take a risk to be seen as somebody difficult. So I think the work that I'm doing with my charity has made me a sort of stronger and more confident person in my singing career. So I would say that having a portfolio career, it can be a great benefit to your main focus.
Yeah, I actually had to look this up because I didn't know what a portfolio career is, but I think I might probably have one. I think part of it is a willingness to walk through a door when it's open. It's very easy, when you set out on a certain career path to go, no, I can't do that because I've decided I'm going to be doing this with my life. And actually, as you work through this business, there are these doors that are ajar, and it's just part of having a portfolio career is just a willingness to go, I'm going to look in here and see what's going on in this room and see whether that's interesting. You don't have to lose track of what it is that you want to do, but there's an awful lot out there that you don't know about when you start working in this business.
Thank you. I wonder if we could move to question 2, which is very much related to that and might sort of spin us off in a direction for that. So Eve, can I pass to you?
What are the pros and cons of being a freelancer?
So has anyone got any thoughts on pros and cons? I know we've touched a little bit on this, but perhaps if we start with the pros, what do we feel the benefits are of this potentially quite risky but rewarding career?
Well, I personally love not working for one company. I love, and this really does not suit everybody. So this could be a pro or a con. But for me, I've been more or less freelance all my adult life. And for me, one of the great benefits is actually moving on from one company to another. I did work for about a year in a drama school and found that there was an awful lot about working for an organization that really did not suit me personally at all. And so it's an unusual benefit, but for some of us, I think it really suits us. Just coming in, working with a group of people that you like, that you're interested, that you're excited by for a short period, and then moving on to another group of people. That suits me very well.
I'd agree with that. I think life is so different from week to week, and one week is never the same as another. And although I'm going to put that on the cons list as well for other reasons, I would definitely put it on the pros list as well, because life is exciting and we're always getting to work with different people and do different things. We're not stuck in one office staring at the same wall for our entire lives.
I completely agree that depends on your personality. I've got friends and family who would find it really stressful not knowing what they'll be doing on Wednesday of next week, or not knowing where they have to go to work that day. So a lot of making decisions about the way that you shape your life and career, I think, is about knowing yourself as well. And like the others have said, for me, I love the fact that it's different from one day to the next, that I'm always working in different places and with different people. That really appeals to me. And that there was a period of time when I actually was going to work in the same place every day, and I felt really claustrophobic doing that. But there are other people who take real comfort in that routine. So a lot of it is about personality type, I think.
And if we move to the cons, we might find, of course, that one person's pro is another person's con, and that's very much coming out with this. That this sort of work either suits your personality and the way that you view the world of work, or it doesn't. But does anyone have any kind of cons that they would immediately leap on and say, yeah, you need to know that this is, lurking in the background the whole time?
I think I'd dive in just because I can follow my pro with the immediate con, which is I find the whole freelance experience to be totally energizing, because I'm a complete extrovert. I derive my energy from being with people. The more people, the better. The more different those people, the broader the world is, the broader the horizons. It's energizing. Here comes the massive con. It's completely exhausting, because you're never in one place for very long. You might be living out of a suitcase for quite a lot of the week, for quite a lot of the year. And you're constantly having to present your very best self, I find, because you're meeting new people on a regular basis. So, with your mates, you can kind of decompress and go, I've had enough. But when it's about meeting those people for the first time and trying to say, I'm good at my job and I love my work and I want to work for you again, you don't really have the headspace to say, I've had enough. So, it can be exhausting as well as energizing.
Absolutely. And also financially, it's scary. It's a scary place to be, because you never know from year to year what you're going to earn, or if you're going to earn. So that can be a really, really difficult, one of the most difficult parts, I think, of being self-employed. And in a way, as Charles was saying, it energizes you to constantly fight for your career and to work really, really hard to make sure that you are seen and remembered. But it's scary. It's insecure. I covet the security of a normal job.
Yes, except that, of course, if you've got a normal job, you're secure until you lose your job, and then you're actually, you're in a much worse position perhaps than if you're self-employed. I miss my family. I mean, I live in London, and most of my work is not in London. And so when I'm working, and I'm working a lot, and I need to work in order to bring home enough money, then I'm away from home, and it's all about, well, it was Skype and I suppose FaceTime, and now I suppose it'll be Zoom when we get back to work. But I've got 3 girls. The oldest is 7, so I miss them a lot.
I don't. I love being away from my kids. I love getting the chance to escape and be somebody completely different every so often. I mean, I do maybe 2 operas a year. So the majority of my work, because I do recitals, I'm here, and it works really well. But the odd occasion I get to go off for 6 weeks and do an opera is heaven to me, and I can pretend that I'm alone, and I can watch Netflix and not Peppa Pig, and I can walk around and go to the cinema without any planning and babysitting set up.
This comes back to my idea that some person's pros are someone else's cons, so it very much depends on the person concerned. I just suppose, keeping an eye on the time, if we could just move to question 3 from Hannah, please.
How did you get started as a freelancer? I know the field can be unpredictable, so how different is what you're doing now to what you planned to do when you were younger?
I don't know about anybody else, but I slightly stumbled into a freelance career. And I think when I was the age that you guys are, I didn't really have a sense of what a freelance career of the sort that I now have would look like. As has already been mentioned, I was actually training at that point as an organist, and I guess I thought maybe I would end up in cathedral music, and I had an idea of what that sort of world looked like. But actually, I, with time, realised that I was much more interested in playing the piano, that that spoke to me much more, and that I was more interested in the repertoire that I could play that way. And so I slightly changed tack. And I suppose, as Ben said, having the being willing to walk through open doors is such an important part of creating a career. And for me, I felt like I was on a track I didn't want to be on, and so I sort of stepped sideways and trained as a pianist, and that's then been what I've done. And I then started working with people that I'd studied with, and from there gradually built up a network of people that I worked with gradually. But I wouldn't say I woke up one morning and said, right, I'm going to build a freelance career. It gradually evolved out of what I was doing as a student, and then in the years after I studied.
For me, I started as in a salaried role. There are some roles for performers that are salaried, not many in this country, but I was in the chorus at a lovely opera company in Sussex called Glyndebourne, you might have heard of, and I had a place in the chorus for 2 years, which I loved, and it took away a lot of the cons that we've just mentioned, because I knew exactly what I was being paid for those 2 years. I knew what the schedule was going to be, and I knew that I was going to be in that one place, so I could set up all my childcare and living arrangements. I wasn't living out of suitcase, so I really enjoyed that. But my heart was in the solo side of things, and I wanted to give it a go, which is why I ended up sort of leaving the bubble of safety of that chorus and attempting to have a career as a soloist. But there's a lot about that I miss.
Yeah, very, very similar to what's been said, sort of that idea of falling into freelance whilst being a student was very much my experience, sort of picking up work with various consort groups and sort of doing the big church deputizing scene that is in London, where you sing in a different church every Sunday. And then, of course, Vultures 8 came along, and that was very quickly a full-time contract and took all of my time. So but what was surprising to me was that once I was in Vultures 8, if you'd asked me, even in my sort of 7th year in the ensemble, I thought I was probably going to do that for the rest of my career. And then there was just this realization that actually I wanted to pepper it with other things. So I sort of got the full-time, the dream idea for the singer, isn't it? That full-time contract. But a bit like Kitty, then thought, actually, this isn't quite what I want. So sort of went full circle, really.
I was supposed to be a musician when I was at school. That was the plan, and then it became clear that I wasn't practicing hard enough, that I was never ever going to get into music college or university or do a music degree. And I discovered drama school by accident through a friend of mine who wanted to become an actor. And I was passionate about theatre, always had been, but I didn't realise that there were jobs other than acting. So I was really lucky. And because I'd started a company with a group of friends when I was 16, getting and had been touring every summer holiday, getting into drama school as a stage manager was a walk across the park, really. And so suddenly there I was in the theatre. But I think I'd always known from quite a young age that I wasn't going to have a normal career. So even though I didn't really know what a freelancer was, I don't think I'd ever thought that I was going to go to the office like my dad did.
Thank you, everyone. Can I move to Zara for question 4?
So how important was what you studied for GCSE, A-level or degree in facilitating your career path? And would you recommend the study of any particular subjects or courses at school or university in order to go into a career in the arts?
I'm going to say something really controversial to kick things off. I think it's really important you study what you love, because that is the guaranteed way to give yourself headspace to become the person you're meant to be. And I say this because I have 3 degrees, one in classical studies, a master's in classics, and a PhD in classics and musicology. Now, none of those in any way would be on the projected career course for classical singer and vocal coach. I think if you said to somebody, you know, you did Greek and Latin as your first degree, but what it did, and I really believe in this. I was a choral scholar at the same time, and I sang in about 7 choirs, you know, but because I was doing what I loved, and I was enjoying myself. I actually did well at it, and I succeeded, and it gave me the headspace and the confidence to then do that organic flip into music that seemed to be happening. It was calling me, and I was picking up work, and because I was happy, and I was only happy because I'd had that space to grow. So for me, I think it's not necessarily what you study, it's finding joy and following that, and letting yourself blossom. Others may feel very differently.
I'll chip in. I completely, wholeheartedly agree with you, Charles. And actually, a tangible Norwich High example I can think of is, I remember when I was having to pick my AS in A levels, agonising over whether I should take music. Because I love music. I absolutely loved music at Norwich High, and sang in choirs and did singing lessons. But I knew I didn't want to be a performer. I knew I didn't want to go to music college or conservatoire. But I loved it, and I was there thinking, oh, should I pick a subject that might be more useful long term or practical, and had lots of different influences of different people and teachers and parents and saying all sorts of different things to me. And in the end, I decided, you know what, I want to do music. I want to have 2 more years of basking in music when I go to school. And you know what, thank goodness I did. Because I studied music, it's certainly helped me in terms of now directing opera. I'd never planned to direct opera. I'd absolutely, I did a degree in English and Theatre Studies because I wanted to learn more about drama and literature, thinking possibly I might be a director, who knows. Opera was not on the cards in any way, shape or form. But whilst I was studying, the music director of Warwick Arts Centre approached me and said, have you ever thought about directing an opera? And I honestly said, no, I hadn't. And he was the one who reminded me and said, well, you love singing. You've got a degree in music. You can read a score. Why not give it a try? And actually, having had that foundation meant I was going back to my A-level books and things like that, and actually drawing on that. And it has helped me no end. I've had that skill that I've nurtured in my back pocket. So I think you just don't know when something's going to be useful. And I'm so glad I took that path.
Yeah, when I was at school, I took, as A-levels, I took maths, English, physics and music. And it was a complete ragbag of subjects. I was lucky that the school were willing to put up with somebody like that and not say to me, how on earth are those A-levels going to be any use? What career could those possibly be? And of course, they are the 4 A-levels that are ideal for a lighting designer, if you like. They completely encompass the job that I did. But that job barely existed when I was at school. There were maybe 3 or 4 lighting designers in the United Kingdom when I was at school. And so you study what you love. It's not, if you're going to be a doctor, I think that's a very irresponsible thing to say. But, but if you're going to be an artist, study what you love, because there isn't anything that you learn that doesn't feed you as an artist. There's no piece of knowledge that doesn't make you better at what you do.
I think that's a brilliant message to kind of end that bit of the question on, but actually to reinforce in all of this the importance of following a pathway that you love and not being so hung up on what direction that may take you. I think one thing we learn from all these conversations is you can't predict that pathway, and actually it's much more exciting to not try, I think, and see what pathways open up as you go through. So just mindful that we think we've got about 9 minutes left of this lesson. If I could move to the sort of quick fire questions, and if I could be sort of brutal in asking those people who are being asked the questions to spend somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute answering them, then we can get through as many of these as possible. So Hannah, could I move to your question A, please?
Ben, how do you first approach lighting a show?
30 seconds.
Yes.
Read the play. Read the play, and then read the play again. If it's an opera, then I will study the score in a great deal of detail. And the lovely thing about opera is that you get to know long way in advance of what you're doing. So you get time. When I was doing Tristan a few years ago, I spent a year working on the score before the rehearsal started, just getting my head around how that opera was put together. Yeah, that's how I get started. Understanding the role that light is going to play or not play. Sorry, you've asked me a massive question there. I hope that's a good start.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Could I go to Eve for question C, please? Eve, are you all right to give us question C?
Yeah. Charles, can you explain what a core animator is?
Yeah, well, yes, I hope so. We're sort of somewhere between, we're sort of a choir fixer and a sort of somewhere between a vocal coach and a director. We tend to go in to work with people to encourage more energized, a more energized approach to their music making and more animated performance. But we do everything from sort of fix technical issues, rehearse music, encourage people to think a different way about their voice. How am I doing, Libby? Does that sound about right? Well, I'll stop there.
Brilliant, thank you. Can I go to question D that Grace will give us, which is for Libby, I think.
Libby, did you face any major challenges being the first woman appointed as an organ scholar, and why do you think it took so long for it to happen?
Well, to be really precise about it, I wasn't the first woman to be an organ scholar, but out of the Oxford and Cambridge all-male choral traditions, it was the first time they'd had a female organ scholar. And actually, it was amazing. The group of people there at the time were incredibly straightforward about it, and there is no earthly reason why women can't play the organ in the same way that men can. There's no biological difference that has any impact on that. But there was a lot of resistance, and there's a lot of sense of tradition in the organ world in general. And so it was amazing that the people at Christchurch at that time were really straightforward about it. There were practical considerations that nobody had thought about, and this is an interesting thing in any kind of discrimination, isn't it? We would go to do a concert somewhere and they would say, right, the boys are getting changed in here and the men are getting changed in here, and I'd be stuck in the middle and go and get changed in the toilets. And those kind of day-to-day things that actually do stop people progressing are really important. But I think it has changed since. So it's about 15 years since I finished that role, and there have been I think 2 more women in equivalent positions, which is great, but there need to be more.
Thank you very much. Could we go, Zara, would you mind giving us your question E, please?
So Genevieve, can you tell us more about your experience as a podcast host?
Well, that's been a very impromptu thing as of recently. As a director, I'm fueled by telling stories to audiences. And obviously over this last year, being able to put shows on stage and tell stories to live audiences has not been possible. So I launched a podcast with Into Opera, How Did You Get Into Opera, over the pandemic, as another way, as another platform for continuing to tell stories over the pandemic. And these stories have been about how the pandemic has affected the lives of artists across the whole of the opera sector, how it's affected their lives and their work. And it's been a real privilege. It's been wonderful to be able to help facilitate and host those different artists and to help them share those stories to people, whether they're into opera or not into opera. And it's been a real challenge to work with a different medium and have to kind of set that all up technically here. Try and get kind of the best quality audio we can. But it's been, again, a very new role that I would never have expected to find myself in, but a joy. And the same thing, again, throughout my work, it's all about telling stories, and it was just about finding a new medium to do that.
Thank you, Genevieve. And could I go to Rosie? I think you had a question for Kitty.
Hi Kitty. How did you decide which schools were best suited to you based on the type of career you wanted to have?
Schools, or do you mean further education?
Further education, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was really lucky. I went to a specialist music school for my A-levels, Chetham's in Manchester. So I met my singing teacher there, Jane Highfield, And that was a really easy decision for me to then go on to Guildhall, because that's where she was. But I think for singers, certainly the main important factor to be choosing is where the singing teacher that you want. So I don't know how I would apply that to the other fields that you might be interested in as a performer, but certainly as a singer, singing teacher is everything. I wanted to be south because I'd been in Manchester for those 2 years. I wanted to be down south so that I could be a bit closer to my family. So I went to London for that. But I think the music colleges in London are all fantastic. So I had no qualms I would have gone to any of them if my teacher had been going there. I think if my teacher had been teaching there.
Thank you, Kitty. And I wondered if we might finish actually with a sort of more general but quite a good conclusion question, which is actually question 10, Grace, if you're happy to ask that. But I think it's something that we could, and we might also feed into question 11. So could you ask both of these questions? And then hopefully we could hear from each of the panel again for 30 seconds to quickly summarise that up.
So the first one is, what are you most proud of and why? And then the other one is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started out?
So if I could ask perhaps the panel to choose one of those two questions as we go around. So what are you most proud of and why? And what do you wish you knew when you started out that you know now? Could we go to Genevieve first, please?
I had a feeling you might say that.
Sorry.
I think I'll take the proudest moment. And I did one answer to this actually yesterday, but I'll give you a different answer today. I think when the organisation that I'd founded, Into Opera, when we launched our first big major project, which kind of ended with a big performance that actually took place in Norwich, and it involved, gosh, about 250 children on stage, a huge tech and design team. It was far bigger than anything I'd actually imagined we'd end up producing. And it was just that moment of going, wow, we did it. That first event, tick. And I actually took that leap from this freelance career and constantly being someone else's employee to actually launching an organization, employing a staff of people, bringing this positive experience to a lot of young people in the city where I grew up. And to see the positive impact that it had, and for it to have been successful artistically too, and to hear that applause from an audience and that coming together of audience and performer and those communities. I'm welling up just thinking about it. Yeah, but that was a real milestone, and that was a really special moment, I think, for me.
Thank you, Genevieve. Can I come to Charles next, please?
From the sublime to the ridiculous, then. What do I know now that I wish I knew when I started out? Genuinely, the importance of keeping good records for tax, because I used to keep my receipts in shoeboxes under the bed, and I just shove them in there, train tickets, receipts, and everything would go in there, and everything was coming out of my personal bank account. So every single year I'd have a nervous breakdown in the third week of January, because I'd have to sort 18 billion receipts, and I'd have to sift through, my Kitty's laughing at me. It's true, it's so awful. I'd sift through this business back.
I'm laughing because you're speaking in past tense and I still do this every January.
Well, this is the thing, that making the switch to thinking about your business you and personal you was the best thing I could have done. So now I have a business bank account, and now there are fancy apps to photograph receipts, and you only keep those receipts which are related to business. Now tax, which we have to do as freelancers self-employed people in a far more nerve-wracking way than anybody ever who just has, to quote earlier, a proper job. So keep records. Make sure you don't keep your receipts in a shoebox, otherwise you're just going to have to torch them all and hope you don't get sent to jail.
That's a brilliant tip, and actually not the first time someone said it to us this week as well. Can I go to Ben, please?
Yeah, there's terrible receipts. Do you remember that you put them in a box and you get them out and they would fade completely, so that you couldn't actually read what was on them? Anyway, yes, the thing I'm most proud of is the young lighting designers who've worked with me over the years, who've gone on to make careers of their own. That's definitely, I'm more proud of that than I am of any shows that I've lit myself. And the thing, well, the thing that I didn't understand when I entered the profession, which I think is something that nobody really tells you, but I was given really good advice by an actor who said there's a lot more to acting than there's a lot more to being an actor than being good at acting. And there's an awful lot more to being an artist than being good at art, to be honest. And the really difficult thing is that being talented is not enough. That was something that I learned. I think it's very important.
Thanks, Ben. Could I go to Libby, please?
Well, it follows on quite neatly from what Ben was saying, that talent isn't enough, because I think I wish I'd known when I was setting out and when I was studying, and even when I was still at school, that every single person you meet is somebody that you can learn something from. And that is true. I mean, it's also true that every person you meet might lead to some form of work or professional opportunity, but just as a person and as an artist, everybody you meet has something that you can learn from, either that you realize that's definitely not how you want to act, or that they've got a brilliant idea on how this particular phrase of music goes that is different to what you thought, and actually learning to be really open and receptive to all of those different ideas and inputs from all the different people you meet means you can sort of draw together this web of different inspirations and ideas and feed all of that into your own creativity.
Thanks, Libby. And finally to Kitty on those same two questions, or one of the two.
I would say the thing I'm most proud of is SWAPRA, because it's taken me out of my own solipsism. I think as a performer, you can get very, very self-obsessed and focused on your own career and what you're doing, and as mentioned, it can be quite lonely, and it can be a bit narcissistic. You can be a bit of sort of obsessed with your own success, and I think SWAPRA has made me come out of that and think about other people and do something that helps other people, which has done enormous things for my self-esteem and my sense of, you know, I'm achieving something that is beyond myself, and that has a more lasting legacy than my singing will.
Thank you, and that's I think a brilliant message to end on. So I'm mindful that we're just approaching 1 o'clock. A huge thank you to the panel for joining us and for sharing their considerable expertise across such a wide range within the arts. It's been a real pleasure to learn more, and as I say, we could have spent a whole day really getting into this, and there's so much material there. But also thank you to the Lower 5 GCSE music class for preparing those questions. We had just as many again that we didn't have time to get onto, but maybe something for another session. But yeah, a huge thank you from Norwich High School to all of you for putting this session together. Thank you.